Fleet Admiral Taemin stood at the wide window of Nexus Prime Station, watching the endless darkness of space. The station floated at the edge of the Forbidden Zone, a place where ships went to die. For 300 years, nothing had come back from that empty void. Not one ship. Not one signal. Nothing. The Forbidden Zone stretched before them like a black wound in space itself. Stars died at its border. Light bent wrong. Even their best scientists could not explain what lay beyond that invisible line. They only knew that anything crossing into it vanished forever. Taemin had commanded this watch for 20 years. His green skin showed the wear of long service, and his forearms moved with practiced ease as he reviewed the daily reports. The Galactic Hegemony trusted him to guard this border. Nothing dangerous could come from the dead zone. Nothing lived there. Behind him, the command center hummed with quiet activity. Officers from 12 different species worked at their stations. The blue-scaled Vrex handled communications. The crystal-bodied Nethak managed weapons. The flowing Moltar operated the sensors. All of them loyal to the hegemony. All of them safe in their mighty station. Captain Sora sat at the patrol command desk, her silver hair catching the light from the screens. She commanded 5 cruisers that swept the border every day, fast ships with powerful weapons. The best the hegemony could build. Nothing could surprise them here. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Haywan from the sensor station. Her voice carried worry. "I'm reading something strange." Taemin turned from the window. "What kind of strange?" "The readings don't make sense, sir. There's movement in the zone, but—" Haywan paused, checking her instruments again. "But there's nothing there." Captain Sora stood up quickly. "Show me." The main screen flickered to life, showing the edge of the Forbidden Zone. Empty space stretched in all directions. Dark and cold and lifeless. But the sensor readings showed something else. Energy patterns that made no sense. Movement without mass. Heat without fire. "Could be sensor ghosts," suggested Commander Kyung-ho, the station's science officer. His crystalline body reflected the screen light in rainbow patterns. "The zone plays tricks on our equipment." "No," Haywan said, her voice tight with fear. "This is different. The patterns are too organized. Too purposeful." Alarms began to sound throughout the station. Red lights flashed as the automated systems detected something their programming said was impossible. The computer voices spoke in calm tones that somehow made everything more frightening. "Unknown contact detected. Classification impossible. Threat level undefined." Taemin felt his stomach drop. In all his years of service, he had never heard the computers say impossible before. They were built to understand everything, to classify every threat, to keep the hegemony safe. "All ships, battle stations," Captain Sora ordered into her communicator. "Form defensive line at the border." The 5 patrol cruisers moved quickly into position. Each ship carried enough firepower to destroy a small planet. Their shields could stop almost any weapon. Their sensors could detect a single fighter at 1,000 light-years. "The pride of the hegemony navy." "What are your orders, Admiral?" Sora asked. Taemin stared at the screen. The sensor readings grew stronger. Something was definitely out there. Something big. Something that shouldn't exist. "Hold position," he said finally. "But be ready for anything." The minutes crawled by like hours. Every officer watched their screens with growing fear. The sensor patterns grew clearer but remained impossible. Energy without source, mass without matter, movement without physics. Then space itself began to tear. It started as a small crack in the darkness. A line of white light that hurt to look at directly. The crack grew wider, revealing something beyond that made no sense. Not another dimension, not hyperspace. Something else entirely by the void, whispered Navigator Ji-young. "What is that?" The tear opened like a wound and something emerged. A ship, but unlike any vessel in the hegemony databases. It was huge, easily the size of a battlecruiser, but its design followed no known pattern. Smooth curves mixed with sharp angles. Dark metal that seemed to drink light. Markings that shifted when viewed directly. Scanning the vessel, Kyung-ho reported, his voice shaking. I'm getting nothing. The scanners can't identify the whole material. The energy signature doesn't match any known power source. It's like the ship doesn't exist, but we can see it." The mysterious vessel hung motionless in space just beyond the Forbidden Zone's border. It made no threatening moves, sent no signals. It simply waited as if studying them. "Sir," Communications Officer Nari called out. "I'm receiving a transmission." "From where?" Taemin demanded. "From the unknown ship, sir." "But that's impossible." Our systems show no outgoing communication from their vessel. Put it through. Static filled the command center, then cleared to reveal a voice speaking perfect hegemonic standard. The accent was strange, ancient somehow, but every word was clear. This is Captain Hyunwoo of the Terran Defense Force vessel Indomitable. We come in peace, but we are prepared for war. Silence fell over the command center like a heavy blanket. Every officer stared at the speakers in shock. Terran. That word existed only in the oldest records. Legends spoke of a death world called Terra, home to the galaxy's most feared warriors. But those were just stories. Myths from the early days of the hegemony. Terran? Captain Sora whispered. But they're extinct. Have been for thousands of years. Unknown vessel, Admiral Taman said into the communicator, trying to keep his voice steady. Identify yourself and state your intentions. The response came immediately. As I said, Admiral, this is Captain Hyunwoo of the Terran vessel Indomitable. We are human. We are returning to known space after a long absence. We seek peaceful contact with the current galactic powers. Human, another word from the old legends. The species that could survive anywhere, fight anything, win against impossible odds. But they had vanished from the galaxy long before Taimin was born. Everyone knew they were gone forever. Sir, Kyung-ho said quietly, I'm detecting massive power readings from their ship. But I can't identify the source or type. It's like their entire vessel is made of energy. Weapons? Sora asked. I don't know. I can't detect anything that looks like weapons, but I can't detect anything that doesn't look like weapons either. My scanners are going crazy. Captain Hyunwoo's voice came through the speakers again. Admiral, we understand this contact is unexpected. We request permission to approach your station for diplomatic talks. We have much to discuss. Taman's mind raced. If these really were humans, if the legends were true, then this moment would change everything. The return of Terra's children could shift the balance of power across the entire galaxy. But if they were enemies, if they came as conquerors... Stand by, Captain Hyunwoo, Taman said. I must contact my superiors. Of course, Admiral. We will wait. We have waited this long. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in heavy silence. Every officer stared at the mysterious ship on their screens. It hung in space like a dark promise, beautiful and terrible at the same time. Get me a direct line to Hegemony Command, Taman ordered. Priority Alpha. Tell them we have a situation that could change everything. As Nari worked to establish the connection, Taman continued to stare at the human ship. After 3,000 years of absence, humanity had returned. The question that frightened him most was simple. Why now? The Indomitable waited in the darkness, patient as a predator. And Admiral Taman knew that whatever happened next would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. The humans were back and nothing would ever be the same. The Great Hall of Hegemony Prime had seen many historic moments. Kings had surrendered their crowns here. Entire species had sworn loyalty to the Galactic Empire. Wars had ended with the signing of treaties on its crystal floors, but nothing had prepared the assembled dignitaries for the sight of humans walking through those ancient doors. Captain Hyunwoo entered first, followed by 3 members of his crew. They looked exactly like the pictures in the old records. 2 arms, 2 legs, brown skin, black hair. Nothing impressive about their size or strength. They wore simple blue uniforms with no visible weapons, but something about them made every alien in the room take a step back. Maybe it was the way they moved, with confidence that seemed to come from the bones. Maybe it was how their eyes took in everything without showing fear or wonder, or maybe it was something deeper, something that touched old memories buried in alien DNA. Welcome to Hegemony Prime, Chancellor Kyung-soo said. His 4 arms spread in a gesture of greeting. I am Chancellor Kyung-soo, leader of the Galactic Hegemony. Captain Hyunwoo stepped forward and bowed slightly. Thank you for receiving us, Chancellor. I am Captain Hyunwoo of the Terran Defense Force. These are my officers. Commander Yu Jin, our tactical specialist, Dr. Minho, our science officer, and Ambassador Subin, our diplomatic representative. The humans took their seats at the great table. Ambassador Subin, a woman with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes, placed a small device on the crystal surface. It looked like nothing more than a simple cube, but it made the alien scientists in the room shift nervously. Before we begin, Chancellor Kyung-soo said, I must ask, how do we know you are truly human? The records say your species vanished thousands of years ago. Dr. Minho smiled gently. We understand your doubt, Chancellor. We did not vanish. We simply went elsewhere. Elsewhere? War Minister Yunji leaned forward, her crystal body reflecting the lights in sharp patterns. There is no elsewhere. We have mapped every star system in this galaxy, every planet, every moon. There is nowhere to hide an entire civilization. You are correct, Ambassador Subin said. There is nowhere to hide in this galaxy. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Several council members exchanged nervous glances. If not in this galaxy, then where? We went beyond, Captain Hyunwoo explained. Beyond normal space. Beyond the dimensions you know. We learned to walk between realities, to exist in spaces that have no names. Science Minister Bo-ram cleared his throat. That is impossible. Dimensional travel requires massive amounts of energy. Even if it were possible, living beings could not survive in other dimensions. Dr. Minho stood up slowly. May I demonstrate? Before anyone could answer, the human scientist simply stepped sideways and vanished. Not like a teleporter or a hologram shutting off. He was there, then he was not, as if he had stepped behind an invisible door. The alien council members stared at the empty space where he had been standing. Dr. Ah Young's tentacles writhed in her water suit. Two of the smaller delegates actually fainted. Fascinating, Dr. Minho's voice came from nowhere. The dimensional barriers here are quite thin. Your galaxy sits at the intersection of several reality streams. That makes travel much easier. He reappeared exactly where he had been standing, as casual as someone returning from a walk to the next room. How? Science Minister Bo-ram whispered. Practice, Dr. Minho said with a smile. Humans have always been good at finding new places to explore. When we finished exploring this galaxy, we found others. Chancellor Kyung-soo felt a chill run through his body. If humans could travel between dimensions at will, if they could step in and out of reality itself, then they were far more dangerous than any weapon the hegemony possessed. Why did you leave? He asked. We didn't leave, Ambassador Subin corrected. We expanded. Think of it as opening new rooms in a house. We still live in the original rooms, but now we have many more. Then why return now? War Minister Yunji demanded. What do you want from us? The humans exchanged glances, and Captain Hyunwoo nodded to Ambassador Subin. We have been watching, she said simply. From the spaces between spaces, we observe this galaxy. We have seen your expansion, your conquest of primitive worlds, your enslavement of developing species. We bring civilization to backward peoples, Chancellor Kyung-soo protested. Order to chaos, progress to stagnation. You bring chains, Dr. Minho said, his voice still gentle but somehow colder. We have seen what you do to species that cannot defend themselves. How you strip their worlds of resources. How you force them to serve your empire. Commander Yujin spoke for the first time, her voice carrying the authority of someone used to command. Humanity appointed itself protector of developing civilizations long ago. It is a responsibility we take seriously. You have no authority here, Yunji snapped, rising from her chair.
This galaxy belongs to the hegemony.
We built this empire through strength and intelligence. We will not be lectured by ghosts from the past. Sit down, Captain Hyunwoo said quietly. The words were spoken without anger or threat, just a simple suggestion. But War Minister Yunji, one of the most powerful warriors in the galaxy, immediately sat down. She looked confused, as if her body had obeyed without consulting her mind. How did you do that? She whispered. You wanted to sit, Dr. Minho explained. I just helped you realize it. Dr. Ah Young's scientific mind raced to understand what she had witnessed. You manipulated her thoughts? That should be impossible. The Nethek have mental shields that can resist any known psychic attack. We didn't attack anything, Ambassador Subin said. We simply suggested. The universe is more cooperative when you ask nicely. Science Minister Bo-ram leaned forward, his curiosity overcoming his fear. What exactly are you? What have you become? The humans looked at each other again, having one of those silent conversations that long partnerships allowed. We are what you might become, Dr. Minho said finally, given enough time and the right choices. We are humanity grown up. That tells us nothing, Chancellor Kyung-soo said. Captain Hyunwoo sighed. 3,000 years ago, we reached a point where we had to choose. We could continue expanding through conquest, building empires and fighting wars, or we could grow beyond the need for such things. We chose growth, Ambassador Subin continued. We learned to see the universe not as something to conquer, but as something to understand. To work with rather than against. And what did that teach you? Dr. Ah Young asked. That reality is much more flexible than most people believe. Dr. Minho replied. That consciousness and the physical universe are more connected than your science has discovered. That the line between thought and reality is thinner than you think. Commander Yujin gestured to the small cube on the table. This device is reading your thoughts right now. Not invading them, just listening to what you're already thinking. Would you like to hear what we've learned? Before anyone could object, the cube began to project images into the air above the table. The thoughts and fears of the alien council members made visible. Chancellor Kyung-soo saw himself running from an unstoppable human army. War Minister Yoonji imagined her crystal body shattered by weapons she couldn't understand. Dr. Ah Young pictured her water-filled suit cracking, leaving her to die in alien air. Fear, Ambassador Subin observed. All of you are afraid of us. But your fears are based on old thinking. You imagine us as conquerors because conquest is what you understand. What should we fear? Chancellor Kyung-soo asked. Nothing, Captain Hyun-woo said. If you choose to grow, everything if you choose to remain as you are. The cube stopped projecting images and returned to its simple appearance. But the message was clear. Humans could read thoughts, manipulate reality, and travel between dimensions. They had power beyond the hegemony's understanding. What do you want from us? Chancellor Kyung-soo asked again. Change, Dr. Minho said simply. Stop conquering primitive worlds. Free the species you have enslaved. Begin learning to grow instead of just expanding. And if we refuse? Yoonji asked. The humans looked sad rather than angry. Then we will do what we must to protect those who cannot protect themselves, Ambassador Subin said. But we would much rather help you become something better. Science Minister Bo-ram cleared his throat nervously. And if we agree? What then? Then we teach you, Captain Hyun-woo said. We show you what we have learned. We help you take the next step in your evolution. Evolution into what? Dr. Ah Young asked. Dr. Minho smiled, and for a moment his eyes seemed to hold the light of distant stars. Into gardeners of the galaxy, shepherds of consciousness, protectors of the innocent, into something worthy of the universe you live in. The great hall fell silent. Outside the windows, the lights of Hegemony Prime sparkled like jewels. Billions of beings living their lives, unaware that their future was being decided in this room. Chancellor Kyung-soo looked around the table at his fellow council members. He saw fear in their faces, but also curiosity. The humans offered knowledge beyond imagining, but they also threatened everything the hegemony had built. We need time to consider your offer, he said finally. Of course, Ambassador Subin said, but not too much time. The universe is changing, Chancellor, with or without you. As the humans filed out of the Great Hall, every alien in the room knew that nothing would ever be the same. War Minister Yoonji stood in her private chambers, staring out at the military shipyards that orbited Hegemony Prime. Thousands of warships floated in perfect formation, their weapons pointed toward the stars. The greatest fleet ever assembled, the pride of galactic civilization. But after meeting the humans, those ships looked like toys. Her crystal body reflected the lights of the fleet, casting rainbow patterns on the walls. For 3 days she had thought about nothing but the threat humanity represented, not just to the hegemony's power but to everything she understood about the universe. Minister, her aide announced, Admiral Wu Jin has arrived. Admiral Wu Jin entered the chamber with military precision. His blue-scaled skin showed the scars of many battles, and his 3 eyes held the cold intelligence that made him the hegemony's finest military commander. You called for me, Minister? He asked. Tell me honestly, Admiral, Yoonji said without turning from the window. After seeing what the humans can do you believe we can defeat them? Wu Jin was silent for a long moment. Military officers were trained to be confident, to believe that any enemy could be beaten with enough force and the right strategy. But honesty was more important than confidence. I don't know, he said finally. Their technology makes no sense. They appear and disappear at will. They ignore the laws of physics. How do you fight an enemy that can simply choose not to be where your weapons are aimed? The same way our ancestors fought impossible odds, Yoonji replied. With overwhelming force and absolute commitment. She turned from the window, her crystal face hard with determination. The humans are powerful, yes. But they are few, 1 ship, a handful of crew members. Even gods can be killed if you hit them hard enough. What are your orders, Minister? Assemble Battle Group 7. 50 capital ships, our best crews, our most advanced weapons. If the humans are truly as dangerous as they seem, we cannot allow them to live. One demonstration of their power could inspire rebellion across the entire galaxy. Admiral Wu Jin nodded slowly. And the Chancellor's negotiations? We'll continue, Unji said with a cold smile. While we talk peace, you will position the fleet for a surprise attack. When the moment is right, we will end this threat permanently. The Chancellor will not approve of attacking during diplomatic talks. The Chancellor doesn't need to know until it's over. By then, the humans will be dead and the galaxy will be safe. 2 days later, Battle Group 7 assembled in deep space, far from any sensors that might detect them. Admiral Wu Jin stood on the bridge of his flagship, the mighty dreadnought Hegemony's Wrath. Around him floated 49 other warships, each one capable of destroying entire fleets. All ships report ready, his communications officer announced. Signal strength? Wu Jin asked. Full combat readiness across the fleet. All weapons charged, all shields at maximum. Wu Jin studied the tactical display. The human ship was currently docked at Hegemony Prime's diplomatic station, its crew engaged in talks with the Council. They suspected nothing. Remember, he announced to the fleet, we have one chance at this. The humans have shown they can disappear and reappear at will. We must hit them with everything at once. No warning, no mercy, no hesitation. Sir, his sensor officer called out. Long-range scans show the human ship is still at the station. No change in their status. Helm set course for Hegemony Prime, maximum speed. We attack in 1 hour. The fleet moved through hyperspace like a school of metal fish, sleek and deadly and perfectly coordinated. These were not the patrol ships that had escorted the humans to the capital. These were warships built for one purpose, to destroy anything that threatened the hegemony. As they approached their target, Admiral Wu Jin felt a mixture of fear and excitement. Fear because he was about to attack beings who could step between dimensions. Excitement because if the attack succeeded, he would go down in history as the admiral who saved the galaxy from its greatest threat. Dropping out of hyperspace in 10 seconds, the navigation officer announced. All ships, prepare to fire on my command, Wu Jin ordered. The fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation around Hegemony Prime. 50 ships appeared simultaneously, their weapons already aimed at the small diplomatic station where the human vessel waited. Target acquired, the weapons officer reported. All ships have firing solutions. Fire! Admiral Wu Jin commanded. 2,000 energy weapons discharged at once, creating a web of destruction that could have melted a small moon. Particle beams, plasma cannons, quantum disruptors, and gravity bombs all converged on the diplomatic station. The human ship, the Indomitable, simply wasn't there when the weapons arrived. Where did they go? Wu Jin shouted, staring at his sensors. Unknown, sir. No hyperspace signature, no energy discharge. They just vanished. Find them! The fleet's sensors swept space frantically, searching for any sign of the human vessel, but their scanners found nothing. The Indomitable had disappeared as completely as if it had never existed. Then Captain Hyunwoo's voice came through every communication system in the fleet at once. Admiral Wu Jin, that was very rude. We were having such a pleasant conversation with your Chancellor. The voice was calm, almost amused. Not the tone of someone who had just been attacked by 50 warships. Show yourself, Wu Jin demanded. As you wish. The Indomitable appeared directly in front of Wu Jin's flagship, so close that their shields were almost touching, but it had appeared inside the fleet's defensive formation, where it should have been impossible for any ship to materialize. Impossible, whispered the navigation officer. Open fire, Wu Jin ordered. The flagship's weapons discharged at point-blank range. Energy beams that could punch through the heaviest armor struck the human ship directly. The Indomitable absorbed the attack without raising shields, without taking any visible damage. The energy simply vanished into its dark hull. Admiral, Captain Hyunwoo said conversationally, you should know that we don't like being shot at. It makes us grumpy. All ships converge on the human vessel, Wu Jin commanded. Maximum firepower! The entire fleet turned toward the Indomitable, bringing all their weapons to bear. But as they fired, something impossible happened. The human ship began to multiply. First, there were 2 identical vessels, then 4, then 8. Each copy moved independently, each one as solid and real as the original. Within seconds, there were 50 copies of the Indomitable, one for each ship in the Hegemony fleet. Which one is real? the weapons officer asked, panic creeping into his voice. They all are. Admiral Wu Jin realized with growing horror. Each copy of the human ship positioned itself next to a different hegemony vessel. They moved with casual grace, ignoring the defensive fire that should have destroyed them. The copies seemed to be studying their opponents like scientists examining interesting specimens. "This is Commander Yu Jin," came a new voice over the communications. "Admiral, your ships are very impressive, but they're built for the wrong kind of war." "What do you mean?" Wu Jin demanded. "You're fighting like this is still the old universe, the one where physics couldn't be negotiated with, where consciousness and reality were separate things. But that universe ended a long time ago." One of the human ship copies reached out with what looked like a hand made of energy and simply touched the hull of Admiral Wu Jin's flagship. The Hegemony's Wrath, one of the most powerful warships ever built, stopped working. Not destroyed. Not damaged. It just stopped. Engines died. Weapons powered down. Life support continued, but everything else went dark. The ship drifted helplessly in space, as harmless as a piece of space debris. "How?" Wu Jin whispered. "We asked your ship to take a nap." Dr. Minho's voice explained patiently. It was very cooperative. Across the fleet, the same thing was happening to every vessel. The copies of the Indomitable touched each ship, and each ship simply stopped fighting. Within minutes, the entire Battle Group 7 was drifting powerless in space. "No weapons were fired," Captain Hyunwoo announced. "No crews were harmed. Your ships are merely resting. They'll wake up when we're done talking." Admiral Wu Jin found himself floating in zero gravity as his ship's artificial gravity shut down. Through the viewports, he could see his fleet hanging motionless around him. 50 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy, disabled in seconds without a shot being fired. "What are you?" he asked. "We are what happens when a species grows up," Ambassador Subin's voice replied. "When they learn to work with the universe instead of against it." The copies of the human ship merged back into one, and the Indomitable took position in the center of the disabled fleet. It looked small and insignificant compared to the massive warships surrounding it, but those warships were now just floating sculptures of metal and crystal. "Admiral," Captain Hyunwoo said, "we're going to send you back to your Chancellor now. We have something to show him." Before Wu Jin could respond, his ship's systems came back online, but they weren't under his control anymore. The Hegemony's Wrath began moving toward the capital, along with the rest of the fleet. All 50 ships flew in perfect formation, following the small human vessel like children following a teacher. "We can't control our own ships," the communications officer reported unnecessarily. "No," Admiral Wu Jin said quietly. "I don't think we can control anything anymore." The Great Hall of Hegemony Prime had never been so quiet. Chancellor Kyung-soo sat at the head of the crystal table, his forearms folded, staring at the humans who had just made his entire military force look like children playing with toys. War Minister Yoonji sat beside him, her crystal body dim with shame. Admiral Wu Jin stood at attention behind her, his 3 eyes fixed on the floor. The rest of the council members whispered among themselves, their voices carrying fear and confusion. Captain Hyunwoo entered the hall with the same calm confidence he had shown before. Behind him walked Commander Yu Jin, Dr. Minho, and Ambassador Subin. They looked exactly the same as they had during the first meeting. No anger on their faces, no triumph, just the patient expression of teachers dealing with difficult students. "Chancellor," Captain Hyunwoo said with a slight bow, "thank you for seeing us again. You disabled 50 of our best warships without firing a shot," Chancellor Kyung-soo said slowly. "What exactly are you?" Ambassador Subin took her seat at the table, placing the same small cube device in front of her. "We are what we have always been, Chancellor. Human. We are just more human than we used to be." "That explains nothing," Yoonji snapped, though her voice lacked its usual authority. Dr. Minho smiled gently. 3,000 years ago, humanity reached what you might call a crossroads. We had conquered most of our galaxy. We had built a great empire. We had weapons that could crack planets and fleets that could darken the stars. "What happened?" Dr. Ah Young asked, her tentacles moving nervously in her water suit. "We got bored," Commander Yu Jin said simply. The alien council members stared at her in confusion. "Conquest is easy," Captain Hyunwoo explained. "Building empires is simple. Any species with enough aggression and intelligence can do it. But after a while you realize that empires are just toys. games that children play. The hegemony controls half the galaxy, Chancellor Kyung-soo protested. We have brought order to 1,000 worlds. Peace to billions of beings, have you? Ambassador Subin asked quietly. Or have you brought your version of order? Your idea of peace? The cube on the table began to glow softly, projecting images into the air above them. The council members saw worlds they recognized, hegemony colonies and conquered planets. But the images showed things that never appeared in official reports. Slave markets on crystal moons, strip mining operations that turned garden worlds into wasteland, alien children separated from their families and sent to work camps. The real cost of hegemony expansion. You see order, Dr. Minho said as the images continued. We see suffering. You see progress. We see oppression. Every empire requires sacrifice, Yoonji said defensively. The strong must guide the weak. Who decided you were strong? Commander Yujin asked. Who gave you the right to guide others? We took it. Eunji stood up, her crystal body blazing with anger. We earned it through superior technology and military might. That is how the universe works, is it? Captain Hyunwoo gestured to the cube and the images changed. Now they showed human worlds from 3,000 years ago. Cities that covered entire continents, fleets that blocked out the sun, weapons that could rewrite the laws of physics. We had all of that, he said. Power beyond imagination. Technology that made God seem primitive. We could have conquered everything. Why didn't you? Science Minister Boram asked. Because we grew up, Ambassador Subin replied. We realized that the universe wasn't a game to be won. It was a garden to be tended. The images changed again, showing what humanity had become. Not cities or fleets or weapons, but something else entirely. Beings of light and energy who moved between dimensions like stepping from room to room. Consciousnesses that could speak directly to the fabric of reality. We learned, Dr. Minho continued, that consciousness and the universe are connected in ways your science hasn't discovered yet. That thought and reality influence each other. That evolution doesn't stop with better tools or bigger weapons. You evolved beyond physical existence, Dr. Young whispered. We evolved beyond the need for empires, Captain Hyunwoo corrected. We discovered that the most interesting thing in the universe isn't power. It's growth. Learning. Helping other species take their next steps forward. Chancellor Kyung-soo leaned back in his chair, his mind struggling to process what he was hearing. And now you've returned to, what, destroy us? To offer you a choice, Ambassador Subin said. The same choice we faced 3,000 years ago. The cube projected one final image. The galaxy as seen from outside, with different regions marked in different colors. The hegemony's territory glowed red, pulsing with the energy of constant expansion and conquest. But other areas glowed with softer colors. Green for growth, blue for learning, gold for cooperation. There are other ways to live, Dr. Minho explained. Other paths your civilization can take. We're here to show you some of those paths. And if we refuse? Yoonji asked. The humans exchanged glances and their expressions grew sad. Then we will do what we must, Captain Hyunwoo said. The universe is entering a new phase of development. Species that cling to old ways of thinking will be left behind. You would destroy us? Chancellor Kyung-soo asked. We would isolate you, Ambassador Subin corrected. Place barriers around your territory that you cannot cross. Allow you to continue as you are, but prevent you from harming other species. Admiral Wu Jin, who had been silent throughout the meeting, finally spoke. For how long? Until you grow up, Commander Wu Jin said simply. However long that takes. The great hall fell silent again. Outside, the lights of Hegemony Prime continued to sparkle, but everyone in the room knew that those lights might soon be all that was left of their civilization's reach. What exactly are you offering? Chancellor Kyung-soo asked finally. Dr. Minho stood up and walked to the center of the room. Knowledge, understanding, the chance to become something more than conquerors. We can teach you how consciousness really works, Ambassador Subin added. How to communicate with reality itself. How to grow beyond the need for dominance and in return, Yoonji asked suspiciously. You stop expanding through conquest, Captain Hyunwoo said. You free the species you have enslaved. You begin learning to cooperate instead of dominate. That would mean the end of the hegemony as we know it, Chancellor Kyung-soo said. Yes, the humans agreed simultaneously. But not the end of your people, Ambassador Subin continued. The beginning of something better. Something worthy of the potential we see in you. Science Minister Boram cleared his throat nervously. How do we know you're telling the truth? How do we know this isn't some elaborate deception? Dr. Minho smiled and held out his hand. Because we're going to show you. Before anyone could object, the human scientist's consciousness reached out and touched the minds of everyone in the room. Not invading their thoughts or controlling their actions, but sharing something far more profound. For just a moment, every alien in the Great Hall saw the universe through human eyes. They felt the connections between all living things. They sensed the vast web of consciousness that linked every star and planet and thinking being. They understood for the first time what it meant to be part of something infinitely larger than themselves. The experience lasted only seconds, but it changed them forever. Chancellor Kyung-soo found tears running down his face, though he didn't remember when he had started crying. Dr. Ah-young's tentacles had gone completely still in her water suit. Even War Minister Yoon-ji's crystal body had stopped blazing with anger, replaced by something that might have been wonder. That, Ambassador Subin said quietly, is what we're offering. Not just to your leaders, but to every being in your territory who wants to learn. The choice is yours, Captain Hyun-woo added. But choose quickly. The universe is changing with or without you. Chancellor Kyung-soo looked around the table at his fellow council members. He saw the same expression on every face. Fear, yes, but also hope. The possibility of becoming something greater than they had ever imagined. If we agree, he said slowly, how do we begin? Dr. Minho sat back down, his gentle smile growing wider. With the hardest step of all, you stop thinking of yourselves as rulers and start learning to be gardeners. And you'll help us? Dr. Ah-young asked. Every step of the way, Ambassador Subin promised, until you no longer need our help. Outside the Great Hall, the galaxy continued its ancient dance of stars and planets and countless civilizations. But inside that room, something new was being born. Not an empire or a conquest or a war, but a partnership between species that had learned to grow and species that were just beginning to understand what growth really meant. The hegemony's greatest fear had not been an enemy they could fight. It had been the realization that they were still children, playing with toys they had mistaken for real power. But perhaps with the right teachers, even children could learn to become something wonderful. The age of empires was ending. The age of gardeners was about to begin, and humanity, which had once conquered the stars, had returned to show the galaxy how to tend them instead. Captain Dae-ho Kim stood on the bridge of the Terran Defense Station, watching the morning light spread across New Haven's surface. The planet below looked peaceful. Green fields stretched between small cities. Rivers sparkled in the sunlight. Children were probably playing in the gardens of the Bright Star Orphanage right about now. Dae-ho had been the station commander for 3 years. He loved this job. New Haven was not like other colony worlds. There were no big factories here. No mining operations. No military bases. Just farms, schools, and homes. The planet's main purpose was simple. It was a safe place for children who had lost their families in wars. Across the galaxy, the Bright Star Orphanage was the largest building on New Haven. Soo-jin Park ran it with incredible care. She had worked there for 15 years, ever since the first war orphans arrived. The orphanage housed 247 children from 12 different species. Some were human children whose parents died in border conflicts. Others were young aliens whose worlds had been destroyed by various wars. Dae-ho often visited the orphanage. The children always ran to greet him when he came down from the station. They would show him their drawings and tell him about their lessons. Soo-jin would serve tea and talk about each child's progress. Some were learning to read. Others were studying mathematics or art. A few of the older ones were preparing for university. Hyun-woo Lee sat at the communications desk nearby. He was young, only 22 years old. This was his first assignment after finishing officer training. He enjoyed monitoring the peaceful radio chatter from the planet's surface. Farmers talked about weather. Teachers discussed lesson plans. Children laughed during their playground breaks. The Vexari Empire had been in the news lately. They were a military confederation of several alien species. Their ships had been seen near the Outer Rim territories. They claimed that humans were expanding too fast into space. They said humans were taking territory that belonged to them. Dae-ho was not worried about the Vexari. New Haven was deep inside human space. It was protected by 3 defense stations and a small fleet. More importantly, it was clearly marked as a humanitarian world. Every ship that entered the system received automatic messages explaining that this was a place for orphaned children. Even the most aggressive species usually respected such places. Sujin Park was reading a story to the youngest children when the attack began. They sat in a circle around her in the main playroom. The story was about a brave little rabbit who helped lost animals find their way home. The children loved this story. They asked her to read it at least twice a week. The morning had been perfect. Breakfast went smoothly. The older children helped serve food to the younger ones. After eating, everyone had gone to their activities. Some children were in classrooms. Others played in the gardens. The teenagers worked in the workshops, learning useful skills. Sujin noticed something odd first. A shadow passed over the playroom windows. Then another. She looked up and saw shapes moving across the sky. They were too big to be the usual transport ships, too fast to be cargo vessels. On the defense station, Hyunwoo's console started flashing red warnings. Multiple ships had just appeared in the system. They had come out of hyperspace without any warning signals. His hands moved quickly across the controls, trying to identify the newcomers. "Captain," Hyunwoo called out, his voice tight with concern. "We have unidentified vessels entering the system. They're not responding to our hails." Daeho rushed to the communication station. The screen showed 15 large ships. They were sleek and dark, with sharp angles that looked like weapons themselves. These were clearly military vessels. The design was unfamiliar, but the weapon signatures were unmistakable. "Send the standard humanitarian message," Daeho ordered. "Tell them this is a protected zone for children." Hyunwoo's fingers flew over the keyboard. He sent the message in 12 different languages, including the common Vexari dialect. The message was simple and clear. "This system contains a children's orphanage. It is protected under galactic humanitarian law. Please state your intentions." The response came quickly. A harsh voice filled the bridge speakers. The accent was definitely Vexari. "Human weaklings. You spread your softness across the galaxy like a disease. Your compassion makes you pathetic. Today you learn what happens to soft species in Vexari space." Daeho felt ice in his stomach. "This is not Vexari space," he replied. "This system has been human territory for 20 years. We have documents proving our claim." Laughter echoed from the speakers. "Your documents mean nothing. We take what we want, and we want you gone." The Vexari ships moved into attack formation. Their weapons began charging. Daeho could see the energy readings on his screens. These were not warning shots. They were preparing for full bombardment. "All stations, emergency protocols," Daeho shouted. "Launch all fighters. Charge all weapons. Send distress signals to the nearest fleet base." But even as he gave the orders, Daeho knew it was hopeless. His station had 20 fighters and limited weapons. The Vexari fleet could destroy New Haven's defenses in minutes. The real question was whether they would target the planet itself. Sujin Park heard the rumbling before she saw the ships clearly. The children looked up at the ceiling as dust fell from the beams. Some of the younger ones started to cry. The older children moved closer to Sujin, sensing danger. "Everyone stay calm," Sujin said in her gentlest voice. "Let's go to the safe room. We'll play games there until everything is quiet again." The safe room was in the basement of the orphanage. It had been built to protect the children during storms or accidents. Sujin had never imagined she would need it for something like this. The children followed her down the stairs. Some carried their favorite toys. Others held hands with younger children. They trusted Sujin completely. If she said they would be safe, they believed her. Above them, the Vexari ships finished their target analysis. General Thokvar commanded the fleet from his flagship. He had studied human psychology. Humans claim to value all life, especially children. They built special places for orphans from many species. They spent resources caring for the weak instead of strengthening the strong. This made humans dangerous in Thokvar's opinion. Their compassion could spread to other species. It could make the galaxy soft and weak. Better to crush such ideas before they grew stronger. "Target the orphanage," Thokvar commanded. "Make sure nothing survives. Let the humans see what happens when they try to spread their weakness." His weapons officer hesitated. "General, there are children in that building. Many different species." Thokvar's eyes grew cold. "Exactly. Children grow up to become adults. Adults spread ideas. We will stop those ideas here and now." The first energy beam struck the orphanage's east wing. The building exploded in a flash of white light. Sujin Park and 18 staff members died instantly. 247 children from 12 different species were vaporized in seconds. Yunwu watched the destruction through the station's telescopes. He could not speak, could not move, could barely breathe. The place where hundreds of innocent children had been laughing and learning was now a crater of smoking glass. Daeho stood behind him, fists clenched so hard his knuckles turned white. He had failed. He had promised to protect New Haven. He had promised to keep the children safe. Now they were all gone. The Vexari fleet began withdrawing. Their job was done. General Thokvar sent one final message to the defense station. Tell your leaders that this is what happens to weak species. We will return for the rest of your colonies soon. As the alien ships disappeared into hyperspace, Daeho finally found his voice. His words were quiet but filled with a cold fury that Hyunwoo had never heard before. Send a message to Earth, Daeho said. Tell them what happened here. Tell them the Vexari Empire just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. Hyunwoo looked at his captain with surprise. The sadness was still there, but something else was growing behind it. Something that would soon spread to every human world in the galaxy. The Vexari thought they had shown humans the price of weakness. Instead, they had just awakened something that would teach them the true meaning of strength.